The scene, at first glance, seemed ordinary, almost unremarkable. The Frogmore Gardens in Windsor, washed in that unmistakable soft English light, scouts sitting cross-legged on plaid blankets, scattered crayons, and jars of golden honey glinting in the grass. Catherine, Princess of Wales, without the slightest trace of pomp, lowered herself onto the ground beside the children. No cushion, no hesitation, just grass beneath her dress. She leaned in, pointed gently at a page, slid a sheet closer to a small hand, whispered encouragement in that tone every grandparent in Britain would instantly recognize. Beside her sat Melania Trump, without her trademark wide-brimmed hat, without the armor of protocol or the stiff mask of photo ops. Her eyes were alive, her smile easy, as she tried out the word ladybug and laughed when a child instantly corrected her, ladybird. And then came the unscriptable moment. One little girl, without glancing toward the cameras, clambered naturally onto Melania's lap. You cannot stage that for a director's cue. No assistant can whisper that into a child's ear. Trust of that kind either exists in the space between people, or it doesn't. That is the rare moment when a frame is built not of titles, jewels, or headlines, but of tone, pace, and instinct. And just as quickly, it became clear who had mastered the ability to step half a pace back, gifting the center of attention to the guest and the children, and who still clung to the expectation of holding center stage. People often say of Catherine, she was not born a princess, but she has become one in manner. That is not flattery, it is recognition of craft. And craft, unlike celebrity, cannot be taught in one season. The ability to dim the spotlight on yourself is not a pose, it is a discipline. She does not compete with the camera. She behaves in such a way that the camera has no reason to single her out because the truly interesting action is happening on the blanket beside her, where a crayon scratches across paper, where a jar of Norfolk honey is opened not for a press shot, but to spread thickly onto a slice of bread for a child. Symbols, yes, but living symbols. The pearl earrings inherited from her late grandmother-in-law do not clash with simple sneakers, and the faint train of a royal gown does not prevent her from kneeling on the grass. That is why this picture resonates so strongly with older audiences. It does not scream. It simply reflects something recognizable, like our own grandchildren in the garden, only with medals and ribbons. Melania, in this vignette, also won something rare. The world has grown used to her mask, broad brims shading her eyes, an immovable posture, a silence that sometimes felt colder than deliberate words. Here, though, the mask slipped. Laughter spilled out, gestures softened, and the child climbing onto her lap shattered every preconception. It wasn't about PR. It was about a human signal, I am comfortable here. And in that precise instant, Catherine's quiet skill revealed itself even more clearly. She subtly stepped back, adjusted the tempo of the conversation, and let her guest own the punchline of the ladybug exchange. That, too, is royal craft, to be the conductor, not the soloist, when the guest is meant to shine. Comparison with Meghan is inevitable, and the contrast is not really about titles. Neither woman was born in a palace. The difference lies in their training and instincts. Acting school teaches you to hold the pause, to fill silence with your presence, to seize attention. Royal school, by contrast, teaches you to notice the pause, to leave it open, to gift it to those who are the true focus of the visit, the children, the guest, the institution. And from that comes the perpetual divergence in optics. Where an actor naturally expects a close-up, a princess deliberately drifts into the midshot, leaving the foreground to others. To viewers, this registers as generosity. To protocol, it is high-level mastery. Even the honey jar was more than a charming prop. Norfolk honey was a bridge, home garden bees children. That is the monarchy's vocabulary, endlessly mocked for symbolism, yet endlessly effective because symbols endure. They require no press officer to explain them. They smell like summer, childhood, and memory. The reciprocal gift of a honey jar from the White House was equally correct, a diplomatic rhyme. Yes, we know the props were prepared, the blankets spread, the jars polished. And yet the human choices still mattered, placing the blanket closer to the children instead of apart, lowering yourself onto grass instead of a neat bench, leaning at eye level rather than towering above. Those are not scripted. They are decided in seconds, and they reveal instinct more loudly than any press release. Notice, 2. The tempo. Catherine offers no strong theatrical reactions, no exaggerated gasps, no stage-ready exclamations, no overacted surprise. Her movements are fluid, understated, almost calligraphic. Cameras love that kind of boring consistency. It doesn't hijack the frame, it balances it. For older viewers, this is key. It doesn't feel performed. It feels habitual, ingrained. That is why the ladybug versus ladybird joke played not as a vocabulary lesson, but as a shared smile, pitched at just the right level, intelligible to the children, pleasant to the guest, never patronizing. In such smallness resides what the palace calls soft power. It cannot be manufactured in talking points. It accumulates in memory like reputation. And reputation, unlike reach or ratings, cannot be bought in contracts. It is built from hundreds of seemingly insignificant moments. Tomorrow, the headlines will forget the cut of a coat. But what lingers is the sensation. It felt warm there. That, more than numbers on a social media report, is the monarchy's true KPI. Reach impresses in quarterly briefings. Trust sustains for decades. This is, in fact, the answer to those forever hunting four-shaded digs at the Sussexes. The Frogmore picture was not a dig. It was craftsmanship. And precisely because of that, the contrast between Meghan the actress and Catherine the princess lands so easily in the minds of audiences raised on never complain, never explain. Not because one is inherently better as a person, but because they are trained in different professions. One profession thrives on collecting light. The other endures by distributing it. The first rewards the personal brand. The second safeguards the system. And systems survive storms when led by those who scatter the light, not hoard it. Children, too, proved the point. In a space meant not for adult lectures but for play, any attempt to perform feels alien. Catherine has long since learned that lesson. She does not compete with their attention, she redirects it to the activity. Pass the crayon to him. Draw a little lower. Spread it thicker. These everyday microphrases carry more weight than any tiara. They will never make a press release. But they are the building blocks of the monarchy's domestic capital, the reason it is loved as the institution that can be one of us in someone else's home. And yes, questions of staging never vanish. But that is precisely why we notice the children's unscripted movements. A child does not climb onto a stranger's lap on command. If she does it, it is because trust bloomed in that instant. And children cannot be persuaded with formulas or strategies. They sense it in microgestures. This goes directly to the issue of authenticity, often dismissed in Catherine's case as branding. But branding without substance always exposes itself in pauses. Here, the pauses hold steady because behind them lies substance, years of routine, of muddy boots, of real beehives in Norfolk, of her own children tumbling across the kitchen floor. It is tempting to pit all this against Meghan, to reduce it to who outshone whom. But the point is not beauty. It is system. Catherine scales seamlessly, from a meadow with scouts to a school classroom, from a charity visit to a state banquet. The handwriting is the same. She does not reinvent herself every 6 months. Meghan, by contrast, thrives on reinvention, new formats, new tone, new self. Effective on a sprint, exhausting on a marathon. And monarchy, above all, is marathon. Here, steady breath is valued more than applause lines. There is another layer. With whom do you share the credit? After such encounters, the benefit does not lodge in a personal Instagram feed. It flows to the scouts, more kits, more trips, more funding. That is the inherited value of the image. It does not convert into likes. It becomes things that remain for children. Ironically, that is what makes the picture viral, not the dress, but the sense that, for 5 minutes, the world was calmer. In the end, the distinction between actress and princess lies not in diamonds, surnames, or press offices. It lies in the answer to one simple question: when there is enough light for everyone, to whom do you give the stage? Catherine gives it to the children and the guest. And in doing so, she lifts not only herself, but the institution she embodies. That is why such quiet visits outlast any loud scandal. And that is why, when the next test comes, audiences will trust the one who can calm, not the one who insists on dazzling.